Welcome to Dartmoor, and in this video we're going to be looking at one of the new lenses I've just added to my kit bag, the Viltrox 23mm f1.4 autofocus lens for Nikon Z mount. So what can you expect in this video? Well, we're obviously going to talk lots about this Viltrox 23mm lens. At the moment, it's attached to my ZF-C. Now, the reason it's attached to this camera is because this lens is designed to fit a crop sensor. It's designed to be on the Nikon Z DX range of cameras. I'm also filming this video on my Nikon Z7, and it's kind of got this lens's cousin on it. That's the Viltrox 24mm f1.8 autofocus lens. Now I'm doing a separate video on that, so if you want to know more about that lens, I'll include a link for that in the video description below and at the end screen. But we're going to talk briefly about the technical specifications of this lens. I'm going to tell you about why I've got this lens. We're obviously going to be capturing some landscape photographs with it this evening of Bowerman's Nose on Dartmoor. I've also got a bunch of images that I've been capturing over the last few weeks and months that I'm going to share with you as well. And then we're going to go back home and I'm going to share with you my final thoughts on this lens. Okay, let me talk a little bit about the technical specifications of this lens. It costs about £237. The lens itself weighs about 300 grams. It is a maximum aperture of f1.4, which I can control here using this ring. It's smooth only, it can't be clickable, but you can put it into the A position and then control it from the camera, or have the camera control it for you depending on what mode you're in. There's also a USB port here in the back end of the lens, and you can use this for uploading new lens firmware. I'll talk more about that when I get back. It does have a focus ring, but it doesn't have a sort of manual focus, automatic focus switch here. You can only change that via the camera. But it is autofocus, and that's really important because it works with all the autofocus modes of this Nikon ZF-C. So that's animals, humans, eyes, faces, both in video and stills mode. So pretty well featured there, so it works very well with this Nikon ZF-C. It is a native Z mount lens, so it will work on all Nikon Z cameras, but it is designed really to work with crop sensor cameras, so that's really the Nikon ZF-C and the Nikon Z50. So why do I have this Viltrox 23mm lens? Well, it all boils back to my purchase of this Nikon ZF-C, a camera which I am very happy with. And if you actually want to see my video review of this camera, I'll include a link in the corner of the screen and in the video description below. Now, I've got quite a wide range of Nikon Z mount lenses, but I don't have any prime lenses, and that's because I'm a landscape photographer. I don't really use prime lenses that much. But I didn't buy this camera to shoot landscape photographs. I bought it for video. And one of the best ways to make your video looks good is to use a nice, fast prime. Like the one I'm shooting here, the Nikon Z7, I've got the Viltrox 24mm there, and it's shooting at, I think, at f2.8, and you can see it's got the background all blurred out, and it just adds a really nice look. And I wanted that for my Nikon ZF-C. It's going to be a great video lens, and if I'm shooting in the dark, I can open it right up to f1.4, so I've got lots of light gathering capabilities. The other reason I've got this lens is, again, goes back to why I've got this camera, and one of the reasons I've got this camera is to shoot nice family pictures, you know, of the dog, of the kids, and also to take video, and having a good fast prime, particularly one, again, that works with all the eye autofocus capabilities of this camera, seemed like a really good choice. So I've actually got some images that I've been capturing of other things other than landscapes to share with you once we leave this location, so do make sure you stay tuned for that. But as I am a landscape photographer, it felt right to come out this evening and take some landscape photographs with it. hope you enjoyed those landscape photographs that I've been capturing here at Bowerman's Nose this evening. But I've got a whole bunch more images to show you, so take a look at those. These are all the images that I've been capturing, both in terms of the landscape adventures that I've been having recently, and pictures of my dog, you know, using the animal eye autofocus, and a bunch of other subjects as well. So have a look at those, and then we'll see you back at the house where we'll talk more about my thoughts on this lens. Hello and welcome back. I hope you enjoyed looking at all those photographs. Now I've actually done something, probably the most important thing you should do with your photographs, and that's to make prints, and I think they look absolutely fantastic. I'll do some close-ups there. There's one of Holme Bridge that you saw. What else have we got? I've got one of Dawlish Warren as well, and Bowerman's Nose, and they have come out really well. And I did also printed out this portrait as well. Now you may be wondering, I'm always saying I'm a landscape photographer, I don't take portraits, I don't do other things. So you may be wondering why I have a picture of a portrait there. Well, that's because my hairdresser, someone who's been cutting my hair for over 10 years, asked me to take a few pictures for a competition they were entering, and they wanted some decent pictures, and I thought, I've got a camera, I can help out. So I took some portraits. So this was shot with that particular lens, and it locked right onto the eye, and I've got some fantastic detail in that picture. I'm really quite happy with it, actually. Okay, let's talk about video, because video, this is the main reason why I wanted to get a fast prime, was to give me those creative options that you get with that type of lens. And I'm pleased to say that the Viltrox 23mm has been performing very well. I've had it mostly attached to my Nikon Z FC. I filmed the entire Viltrox 24mm review video with that particular combination, and this bit of video that I'm filming here, that's a Nikon Z FC with the Viltrox 23mm lens, and as you can see, it's looking really good. Although eye tracking works, if I move out the frame, you can see it locks onto the background, and then I come back on, it immediately locks onto my eye. And through all the testing that I did over the various weeks, it didn't seem to have any problems following my eye about. So it was a real good combination of that autofocus capability in that lens attached to the Nikon Z FC. What I do like though is that this lens is going to give me creative options. So with a nice wide aperture of f1.4, I can use the lens in very low light, and in a more controlled environment like this, you can see that what I'm shooting at f1.8 at the moment, it throws out the background, so it gives me a really nice look. So overall, extremely happy with the way this lens works with my video shooting that I want to do with the Nikon Z FC. Before I move on to share my final thoughts, I just want to talk about a really nice feature that these lenses have, and that's the ability to update the firmware. It's a really simple process. I did update the firmware on this Viltrox 23mm. All you need is a USB Type-C cable, so you plug one end into the lens and the other end into the computer, and then that mounts the lens as a drive. And if you go into that drive that's mounted, there's a little text file there, and it tells you what the current firmware and software version is. So if there's a new firmware to update, you just head on over to Viltrox's website, download the update file, unzip it, and then you take that file and then you copy it onto the drive that's mounted for the lens. The lens automatically detects it as a file there, reboots the lens with the new firmware, remounts it back into your computer, and then you go back into that little text file that's there, and you can see that the firmwares are updated. Nice, simple process. Really like that capability. Let me share my final thoughts on this lens. But before I do, perhaps I'll put this all in a little bit of context. No one's paying me to make this video. All the thoughts that I share with you are based on my own personal experience of using this lens and based on my personal requirements for this lens. So like I've always said, this lens is there to serve a few specific purposes for me, so I will share my feelings about this lens and its capabilities based on those requirements. You may have a completely different set of requirements and a completely different budget and may or may not agree with some of the things I said, but that's all fine. All I can do is share how I feel about this lens. Let me share with you some of the less positive aspects of this lens. I don't want to really call them negatives because I feel that at this price point, many of these things are acceptable. First thing, the aperture ring, for example. So I had left it on the A mode, where it clicks into A mode and then use the command dials to change the aperture. This is because I found that when it was in the aperture control ring and you're using that ring to adjust the aperture, because it wasn't clickable, I found it all too easy to knock it. So whether I'm getting it in or out the camera bag or just brush against it, I found myself changing the aperture all too easily. So I decided to just leave it on, click it onto the A mode, and then use the command dials to change the aperture. The lens hood, I found that a little bit tricky to get on and off. I don't use lens hoods a lot, not for landscape photography because I'm using filters, but I found it quite difficult to get on, or you kind of have to push it on and then turn it. Just found that a little bit cumbersome. Also has a limited focal length. Obviously it's a prime lens, so at 23mm it's about 34mm in full frame terms. This is not a comfortable focal length for me personally for landscape photographs. It's perfect for video, it's also perfect for doing the other thing that I want it to do, and that's take family photographs of the dog and the kids and shoot video and stuff like that. But for landscape photography, not a good focal length for me. But that's a personal thing, so you might shoot lots of landscapes at about 35mm. There's no MF/AF switch. I find this quite handy. I've got it in some of my much more expensive Nikon lenses. When shooting landscapes, I like being able to just flick it into MF mode, and that puts the focus beacon on, gives me an idea of whether I've got the things that I need to have sharp or not. But that's very much a nice to have. The lens is also subject to a fair bit of vignetting, especially when open at 1.4, but as you stop down to f1.8 onto 2.8, most of that goes. It can also be corrected in post-production as well. The lens obviously has no weather sealing, and I think it could be subject to a little bit of flare when shooting directly into the sun. Now I say think because I didn't manage to see any flare from the landscape photographs that I took with this lens, but I did with its 24mm cousin on the Nikon Z7, so I suspect this lens will be the same. But again, you're not going to get that type of coating that prevents that kind of stuff on a lens of this price point. And finally, image quality. Now, I don't think the lens has quite the capability to resolve the fine detail that I might expect from one of my Nikon lenses. But to be fair, those Nikon lenses are sometimes 3-4 times the cost. It just doesn't seem to resolve the same level of detail. But I'll put a big caveat on that. That's me pixel peeping quite hard to notice the difference. When it comes to printing your images or putting them on Instagram, you'll never notice a difference. I can't see any reduction in image quality in this particular print. It looks absolutely fantastic. What I think I find, if I have a look at this portrait, which I think was shot at f1.8, the resolution is absolutely fantastic. There's a lot of detail in there. So maybe it's just that this lens is maybe not particularly well suited for landscape photography, or maybe I'm being slightly harsh on it because I'm comparing it to a Nikon lens, which is what I would use for my landscape photography. But I think in terms of image quality, for the types of photographs and video that I am going to use with it, it's bang on the money. Now let's talk about the positive aspects of this lens. This lens costs around £270. If you look at the equivalent Nikon lenses, I think there's a 20mm and a 24mm. They're well over £1,000, the bigger and heavier. Now I appreciate they're full frame lenses, but they're still 3 times the cost. So this lens for me represents excellent value. It's well built, it's solid without being heavy, it's of a decent size. The autofocus, works really well, it's reliable, it's fast, it works in all the video modes and all the photography modes, particularly for my requirements. Having that accurate IAF and video mode is very important, and it's been really easy for me to shoot these videos and to shoot people and to shoot my dog. So in this scope of that context and the price that you pay, I think this lens is incredible value for money. Let me try and summarize my thoughts on this lens. Am I happy with it? Absolutely. Sure, I might be able to get better results from a £1,000 plus Nikon lens, but the Viltrox does everything I need it to do, and it does it very well. Now, your purchasing decision might be different. You might feel that the value add that you might get from a Nikon lens is worth it, and that's absolutely fine. But for what I'm doing and what I want to do with this lens, which is take family portraits, take pictures of the dog, video, shoot my vlogs like this lens nails everything, and it does it very, very well. So for me, it's an excellent choice and represents fantastic value for money. However, there is a small complication in this. What if you have both a crop sensor camera like the Nikon Z FC and a full frame camera like the Nikon Z7 like I have? As I've said in this video, I have been also doing a video review of the 24mm version of this lens, the one that's designed to work on full frame cameras. So if you've got both cameras, which one should you buy? Now, I'm fortunate, I've got both, but I have them for different purposes. But if you're only going to buy one, which one do you buy? Well, that's really difficult for me to give you advice on, because you're again, it all goes down to your personal requirements. But what I will say is that the 24mm lens works perfectly on a crop sensor camera. If you look at these photographs I've taken here, these are a couple of test shots that I took up in Dartmoor, both taken with a Nikon Z FC. I've got one shot taken with a 23mm lens and one taken with a 24mm lens. But as you can see, the 24mm lens on a crop sensor camera gives you a very similar field of view. But the 24mm lens is slightly bigger, slightly heavier. So having to pick one is a bit difficult. It will depend on which lens you're going to use more often and on which body you're going to use more frequently, or whether you don't even have the requirement to use a particular lens on both bodies. But both the 23mm works well on the ZFC and on the Z7, and vice versa, with the 24 working very well on the Z7 and on the ZFC. But I just thought I'll point it out there that there is a potential choice there to make if you own both crop sensor cameras and full frame cameras. Just a quick note on Viltrox lenses. They're producing a lot of high quality, budget friendly lenses at the moment. That range is really expanding, and one of the ones that I've got my eye on as a potential future item is the 85mm f1.8. Now, my mate Gareth Dank, he's done a video review of that, so if you're interested in that lens or just want to get a second opinion on those Viltrox lenses, I'll include a link for his video in the normal places. I do hope you've enjoyed this video, but before you rush off, hang on a second. If you've got some extra time, why not check out my video review of the Viltrox 24mm f1.8 lens for Nikon Z full frame cameras. I'll include a link for that just up in the corner of the screen just now. And if you're interested in some of the other gear that I've got in my Nikon Z lineup of kit, I'll include a playlist for that in the corner of the screen. So there's cameras and lenses and all sorts of stuff there for you to check out as well. And if you want to see the images you saw in this video in a bit more detail, they're all up on my blog. So I'll include a link for that in the corner of the screen as well. But like I say, I do hope you've enjoyed this video. Remember to like, share, comment, all that good stuff. It really helps with the channel. But until the next video, I'll see you then.